we're going to talk about the roads, and I was starting to mention that we talk about the roads an awful lot, during our board meetings, articles in the Village Matters. You might have seen Twitter announcements and Nixle through text messaging, emails, and we, back in June, we had a town hall meeting where we were talking about the roads then. So tonight what we're going to do is recap some of that really briefly, and then get you up to speed on where we're at. The board approved unanimously to move forward with a potential road referendum that will appear on the November 2014 general election ballot. So we're in the process of working through that now. It's still in its infancy, but we are moving forward with that. And so we wanted to give you some updates on that as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Manager Keener, give you a brief update on that. And then we'll start with the Q&A.
Thank you, Your Honor. I promise to keep this short. By a show of hands, are there any runners in the audience? I see a few. Is there any drivers? All right, just checking. I'm a runner, I'm a driver. And I run the streets of Villa Park. And, I do it in the morning, I do it late in the afternoon, and I do it at night. And there's nothing more frustrating than stepping in a pothole. There's nothing more frustrating than tripping on asphalt, things of that nature. And when I drive, just like you, it's very frustrating to drive down roadways that have potholes, crumbling curbs, things of that nature. We have a number of those roads. And again, for this particular topic, many times, folks have said, Keener, when are you going to fix these roads? What are you going to do about the roads? And so what we've done is hired a third-party consultant to take a look at this and actually use a laser and Dynaflect machine to drive our roads to measure below surface and the cracks and et cetera, and that's Robinson Engineering. Also, we hired and formed a cooperative with George K. Baum and Company to help us get from point A to point B, point A being the condition that we're in right now, and point B to improve our roadways. And in a moment, I'll introduce Director Giskelis to kind of take us through some slides. But certainly, I think we all agree that the roadways need to be improved, and some stormwater needs to be done, and some pools need to be repaired, things of that nature. And it's never an easy task to try to balance everything. And that's why we use staff. That's why we use professionals to kind of guide us along, and we use their recommendations. And that's what we've done with George K. Baum and Robinson Engineering. And it's not an inexpensive task to repair the roads or do any improvements, quite frankly. One of the roadways that I'm very proud that we repaired is Michigan, and maybe 2 blocks worth, total reconstruction. I mean, before they reconstructed the road, it was in terrible shape. And that road started out at $876,000, and we're going through a change order right now that'll raise that, and that's not even the final change order. We're working on going out to bid for Van Buren. I call it the roller coaster, east of Ardmore, block and a half at the most. Right now, that's at over $900,000. It's not inexpensive. These roads are very expensive, very time-consuming, and quite honestly, they absorb a lot of our funding, which Director Giskelis will talk about. They absorb a lot of MFT. They absorb a lot of our non-home rule sales tax. We're taking a look at Park Boulevard. Quite honestly, the early estimates of that is over $1 million right now. I think it's $1,073,000, and that's the early estimate. And that's quite a chunk of change. And Director Giskelis will tell you in a moment that our non-home rule sales tax is $1.4 million a year, and not near enough to do everything. So we're constantly doing the holistic approach, balancing, trying to get many things done. And that's where Robinson Engineering came in with the Dynaflect machine and the IMS data. very important. And so at this time, I think I'm just going to let Director Giskelis take over and kind of go through that. Thank you. And I got you a bottle of water, too.
Oh, bottle of water. Okay, hopefully I have better luck this time. So, okay, is the slide showing? All right. Okay. Once again, if you would like more information, please visit our scrolling displays up in the hallway. We'll keep them going as long as people are interested in seeing them. Okay, what are our objectives here? To improve our infrastructure, especially the rideability of our streets. It's an issue of public safety. We want to better our curb appeal and just to make the village more attractive to businesses and outsiders coming to visit the village. That's pretty simple objectives. Here's what we're working with. We have 74 centerline miles of streets. And based on figures provided by Robinson Engineering, they have estimated the asset value of our streets at $97.7 million. That's the value of our streets. As Manager Keener mentioned, we're taking in about $1.4 million per year. To reconstruct a street based on recent experience, you're talking about $1.7 to $1.9 million per mile. And the prices I'm quoting here are going to be a little lower than Manager Keener's because I'm only showing you the pavement cost, not the utilities or others. So North Michigan was about $786,000. Van Buren pavement only is $523,000, as opposed to resurfacing, which is considerably less costly. Now we're talking $350,000 to $450,000 per mile. We recently completed Kenilworth for $458,000, and Harvard and Washington with some state funding cost us $410,000. So you can see our money goes a lot further when we're resurfacing rather than reconstructing. It's basically 1/4 the cost. But if you do the math, we should be doing 3 to 4 miles per year. If we were to use a 14-year life cycle for our road surfaces, and that was a number that Robinson suggested, we would be spending $1.4 million per year on an annual basis just to resurface. That's not doing any reconstruction whatsoever. So basically, that would be our entire $1.4 million would have to be spent on resurfacing each and every year just to maintain our streets. And of course, we have streets that are not in a condition to use resurfacing. They need the more costly reconstruction. So even with those obstacles, we've been able to complete 25.5 miles of streets in the last 7 years, and we did 3.8 miles in 2013. But basically, with $1.4 million, the dilemma we're faced with every year is we could do a lot of resurfacing, we could do maybe one reconstruction and a small amount of resurfacing, or we can do maybe 2 reconstruction projects and no resurfacing. And that's the simple facts. That's the dilemma we face every year when we're trying to put our road program together. You know, simply put, our sales tax funds are not sufficient to do reconstruction and resurfacing together. We can do one or the other, but not both. Now, as far as seeking other sources of fundings, I feel we've been very successful. We've been able to get $19.2 million in grants and loans for 24 projects since the year 2000. But again, the dilemma here is to get outside funding for roads. It's only generally available for your arterial roads. So the local roads have to be 100% funded through local funds. And I think I mentioned the wrong number earlier. It's $2.3 million per year is what we would have to spend if we were to resurface our streets on a 14-year cycle. So it's not the 1.4, it's 2.3. Our road activities fall into 2 categories. As Manager Keener mentioned earlier, we are jointly bidding some of our maintenance projects this year for the first time. We and all other municipalities in DuPage County are basically pooling our quantities together to be able to get lower unit prices. So we're jointly bidding crack sealing projects, the patching contract, and a grind and overlay contract. Asphalt rejuvenation we still do individually. That's on an annual basis. And we still do quite a bit of in-house patching with our own crews. So that's our maintenance activities. The purpose of those basically is what we call pavement preservation. It's to keep the good streets in good condition from deteriorating so that they don't fall to the point where they need the more costly reconstruction, that they could just be maintained at lower cost, hopefully indefinitely, but for as long as possible. The other class of projects was what we call our rehabilitation projects. Now you're getting into the realm of capital improvements, or you're talking complete pavement reconstruction, tearing out the curbs and gutters, putting in the drainage improvements, underground utilities, which play a large factor when we're trying to coordinate projects, trying to make sure the water and the sewer is all put in at the same time so that we can leverage our funding a little bit better, and of course the parkways and the signage. That's all part of the larger projects. So coordinating that is definitely a task, but it does give us access to other sources of funding. We did complete a pavement evaluation earlier this summer. Actually, the firm that did the actual testing was IMS. They did use a surface laser tester to test the surface of all our streets, and then they use deflection testing to determine the base conditions. All that data was turned over to Robinson Engineering for analysis, and I'll quickly go through some of their findings. First of all, we just received in the last few days some maps from them, so I hope you take the time to go look at them. Basically, one map is a proposed maintenance program, and the other map is the proposed rehabilitation program, which would be funded or could be funded through road referendum, and we're talking about $23 million in projects. But before we get to that point, some of the things we discussed is our overall pavement condition came back as a 76.5. 20 years ago it was a 67, so we're going in the right direction. I think the number we tossed about as a goal overall for the village was about an 80, and what it would take to achieve an 80. And one of the things we're always asked, or often asked, is why don't we just do all the bad streets and get it done with? Well, that's what they call a worst first approach. Generally, that does not work. And here's why. All right, am I back? Okay. Worst first does not work because it would basically take $40 million to do all the bad streets. We simply do not have $40 million, and it's not a cost-effective method of repairing our streets, because if you did all the bad streets during that interim, some of your good streets would become bad and require reconstruction. So what we discussed as the best approach is a blended approach. It's a combination of keeping the good streets in good condition while addressing systematically the bad streets, if that makes sense. So what we came up with was basically a two-pronged recommendation. We're looking at $23 million in rehabilitation, reconstruction, heavy resurfacing of projects over the next 7 years, and that would include most of the projects in our capital improvement program, and also many, if not all, the streets from the 2010 proposed referendum. Back then we presented a list of streets that we would do had we received the funding. Well, since then we've been doing some of the streets on that list, but what is still on that list was carried forward and included in this analysis, and that would be included in the proposed $23 million. Give you an overall idea of the breakdown of our condition of streets. The good news is over 53% of our streets are in very good or excellent condition. The bad news is that over 10% of our streets are in poor or very poor condition, and that's the backlog that we're trying to address with the proposed $23 million. I won't dwell on this too long. This is just a list of the streets that are currently listed in our 5-year capital improvement program that are not funded. And I think most of these, if not all these, would be addressed in the $23 million program. Now, there's plenty of photos up there, but I thought I'd include just a few, just so we know what we're talking about here. Astor Court, that's one of our streets that needs total rehabilitation. It needs a new storm sewer. It's in a combined sewer area. There's basement backups there. It's near the top of my list of projects I would like to see funded, certainly. Another example, Yale between Madison and Jackson. And finally, the street that Manager Keener keeps mentioning, Park Boulevard. We are designing rehabilitation of that project. We plan to have the design completed later on this year, but unfortunately it is not funded for construction. It needs to be done. We're probably going to have to do something during the interim on this street. We'll have the plans ready, but we need funding for construction. And as was mentioned, we're talking over $1 million here. Okay, so how do we pay for our road projects? It's fairly obvious to us that reconstruction costs are prohibitive and the general fund is just not a source of funding of that level. Current sales tax helps, but it's insufficient for major road repairs. If we do the one project, we're going to lose ground. If we don't do any resurfacing each year, we're going to lose ground. So, try as we might, the $1.4 million just doesn't, help us to catch up. So that's why we're considering a referendum to issue bonds to try and address some of the bad streets. So the proposed plan, and it's strictly in preliminary phase because we just received the preliminary list of streets. We're going to have to fine tune those, but we're looking at a 6-year plan. Initially, we would have to focus on resurfacing, mainly because it takes 4 to 10 months to design the more complex projects. We want to make sure we coordinate with the water and the sewer separation, and to locate alternative sources of funding for the underground utilities so that we can maybe stretch the road dollars a little bit further. We do have design partially completed for Park Boulevard and for Michigan Park to Madison, so those are probably two of the first projects that would be brought forward for reconstruction. In addition to that, if we can fund reconstruction through an alternative funding source such as a referendum, that would allow us then to put more of our $1.4 million into a maintenance contract. So we would be able, we figure, to do at least $750,000, if not $1 million annually, simultaneously in crack sealing, rejuvenation, patching, and the simple grind and overlays. And then that would address the good streets that keep them in good condition as we're using the reconstruction funds to reduce the backlog of streets in bad condition. So basically what we're looking at is getting an economy of scale, trying to get more money out there to let larger projects to get lower unit prices, and basically all the money that we would generate through these funding sources would be spent on infrastructure. And if we get good unit prices, whether it's joint bidding or assembling larger projects, then we would be able to do even more roads than we initially anticipated. And I think I'm ready for questions.
Hi. I'm Tom Bednar. A couple questions. One is regarding a pothole repair plan now. What is the process for getting potholes repaired in your area? And then the other concern is related to the engineering study that said the street should have a 14-year life cycle. And seeing some of the work that's been done in the last 10 years, looking at Summit south of Central, I think about 9 years ago, there was a significant resurfacing project, and now driving south on Summit's like driving down a washboard. As Kenilworth between Ardmore and Villa was just done in the last couple of years, and it's in almost complete disrepair now. So my concern would be with the bidding on projects. Are we really getting responsible contractors who are giving us good supplies to ensure that we're getting that 14-year life cycle?
Well, first of all, 14 is just an average. Not every street surface is going to last 14 years. There's a lot of different factors that go into how long a street will last. Of course,
What should be a minimum that we put in our contracts? Because I'd say 3 years on Kenilworth would be an extreme disappointment. And even seeing the 7 years, whereas, you drive down to Ardmore, that's in great shape. And so there's different levels of quality of workmanship that's got into it. We just need to make sure we're hiring the best people at really the quality bid, not necessarily the cheapest bid.
well, it comes down to quality control, basically. If he's a pre-qualified contractor with IDOT and he submits the lowest responsible bid, by law, we have to accept the bid unless we have very good reason not to. Once we accept the bid, then we have our engineers on site to make sure that they follow the specifications and provide the proper quality control. The problem is there's so many factors that go into how long a street will last, one of which is drainage, traffic volumes. A street with heavier traffic volumes, more truck loadings is not going to last, even if it's done just as well. So typical warranties on a street are only 1 year. So after 1 year, basically, you cannot have recourse back to the contractor. So it really comes down to good specifications and good quality control. As far as addressing the potholes, we are including in our patching contract some emergency repairs and emergency resurfacing of some of the potholes that opened up, and I believe both Kenilworth and Summit are on our list for interim repairs in this contract that we're letting right now. And what was your third question?
You covered it.
All right.
Ray Bocci, 305 North Illinois. A lot of people use our street from the train station, Cornell and Illinois, and they turn on Division. Now, Division is just a horrible, I wish the board would drive down East Division Street and see how bad it is. It gives a bad impression of Villa Park. The other day, my wife and I saw a luxury car there with both its tie rods broken in the middle of the street that had to be towed away. So I think that street should be considered important to be repaired.
All right, I hope somebody made note of that, and we'll take a look to see what the pavement condition ratings were for that street.
Tom McQuillan, I reside at 429 South Wisconsin Avenue. I had some remarks prepared about the roadways. I apologize about the pools. I spoke a little bit off the cuff, and that kind of jumped out at me at the report, and I hope I wasn't too accusatory. But in regards to the roadways, I'd like to applaud this administration for the steps you've taken. In the past, administrations have been accused of not being fiscally responsible, and I'd like to applaud the village staff, village manager, and the board for organizing these events and trying to sell the community on the need and where the funding's got to come from. I took a few photos of my own today. It wasn't too hard. I went one house either way from mine. And I applaud your department again because talking about my street, Wisconsin, I live half a block south of the Prairie Path. It's been in need of resurfacing for, I'm told, 30 years. And wisely, the village hasn't thrown their money away at that because the base is in failure. And you see this on many streets. When the concrete base or the asphalt base has failed, an 1.5 or a 2-inch overlay and resurface isn't going to hold up. Our roads are in need of major reconstruction. I'll give you these photos, but base failure is evident. In front of my house and my neighbors, the curb head is completely gone, just broken off. And my neighbor actually called the village hall thinking it was a joke when a notice came around about painting house numbers on your curb for the fire department last summer. And 2 major potholes, and I've got the addresses here for you. One's 2 foot in diameter, the other one's 1.5 feet, and they're both right in the right wheel line of northbound traffic. And you can see in these potholes, it's evident of base failure. You have your asphalt chunks, and you've got whitish chips from the concrete that's failed too. So I just want to applaud you for bringing this together, and please continue to sell it well to the community, the need for the referendum and the reconstruction. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, I'm Kathy Neely. I have lived at the same address in Villa Park for the past 28 years. I live on Monterey Avenue.
Yeah, I did.
And I saw your list of immediate projects up there. Monterey was not included. I want to know what you're going to do with the street after this winter, because my section between Highland and Washington is not as bad, but between Highland and Park is horrible. There's a giant pothole in the middle of the street that you almost have to go over the curb to avoid. And I want to say maybe 10 years ago, about the time that Oakland Street was repaved, there was a bond referendum that was passed, and I voted for it because it was a 5-year plan to repair streets, resurface, not rebuild streets. Monterey Avenue was at the 5th year of that plan. It has never happened. So I want to know what happened to my street and how are you going to fix it, because if it's not in your plan to resurface anytime soon, there's some major work that needs to be done to fill in those potholes.
Well, first, I would invite you to take a look at the map there to see if it's on it. And if it isn't on that map, certainly let us know, because if it's in that kind of condition, it should be on that map. We were talking about Monterey actually earlier this morning about the need for possible interim repairs until it can be reconstructed properly. So we will definitely be taking a hard look at that and some of the other streets. I know that gentleman's comment was about not to put asphalt on streets with base failure, but in this case, after this extreme winter, we may have no choice but to do some interim repairs on some of our streets that have totally failed until we can get back to them and reconstruct. As far as the last bond issue passed by the village was in the year 2000, so that was 14 years ago.
Right, and we were at the end of that, we were on the 5th year of that 5-year plan and nothing happened. So why would I vote for another bond issue when I'm not going to see any improvement?
I cannot address that. I would have to basically go back into our archives and see what was promised and what was to be done. But I certainly can tell you what we can do going forward based on our pavement evaluation and what is proposed, and give you some idea of when your street would be scheduled.
Now, truthfully, I would still vote for it even if it didn't include my street, because I have to drive on all the streets in town. So.
Then we'll move you to the top of the list. Okay, yes, I was reminded that there are 2 different maps up there. One is the major rehab list, and the other one is the $750,000 annual maintenance list. So you may be on one map, or you may be on the other map. Hopefully you're on one of the maps. Yes. Yes, as Village President just wanted me to point out, every street in the village was evaluated. The condition of every street was evaluated, the entire village. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Jim Schmidt. I'm at 51 West Adams, and if you evaluated all the streets in town, my street wasn't on the list, and I can't believe that. There's 2 blocks going west on Adams from Ardmore. That's horrible. And I'm fully aware that there's a lot of streets in our town that need repair. And the only thing I ask you to do, I'm willing to pay for it. You can put it on my tax bill. I'm willing to pay for it. I'm also willing to pay your water thing. The citizens of Villa Park want solutions. We want things done. We don't want to talk about it for another 5 years. We want you to enact and move on. And we deserve that. And that's why I'm here tonight. I want to encourage you to take these plans and implement them, because people in this town deserve better. Thank you.
Sir, please come take another look at that map, because I could have sworn that Adams was on one of the 2 maps. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Diane Lubker, and I live at 530 South Michigan. And I see that we are in it has like little railroad tracks kind of on South Michigan, and it looks like we're in a study right now. My question is the combined sewer separation plan. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Is that something that individual residents will have to pay for? Is it like sanitary versus stormwater separation? I'm not sure what that implies.
Well, Well, it implies you live in an area of the village that has combined sewers and they need to be separated. As I mentioned earlier today, in order for us to accelerate our combined sewer separation plan, we would propose to allocate half the cost of the separation to the stormwater management program, because the work basically would entail installation of a stormwater system. So if we go forward with the stormwater management program, we would allocate a substantial amount of those capital funds to combined sewer separation projects.
And would there be any cost to the individuals?
Well, the stormwater management rates that we discussed is what would drive the financing for that. So the $65 per resident per year is what would provide the funding source for that.
Okay, thank you very much.
My name is Cynthia Plahuta. I live on the 800 block of South Michigan. But this is just a quick comment, not about my block, because our block is bad enough with the roads. But I just wanted to support the poor gentleman on Wisconsin. The village manager likes to run. I like to bicycle. You can't bicycle on that block of Wisconsin. Going south on the Prairie Path on Wisconsin, there's no way to take a bike. That's all.
If I recall, I believe that was on our storm damage list because the road literally washed away in the April storm. Or what was...
No, it's been years. It's been years it's been bad.
One more over here.
Yes, sir. Or madam, I can't tell from here.
Hello, I'm Marguerite Lugutke, and I live on North Harvard, a block from North School. I think our people who are looking at the streets should come north of Division also, because there are many streets there, not just my street on North Harvard, but North Michigan, North Wisconsin, North Iowa, going across Addison Road to like North 2nd and 3rd. Those streets are bad too, and our street has buses. It used to be 5 buses a day in the morning and in the afternoon, besides kindergarten buses midday. We have a lot of heavy traffic on that street. Our block from Plymouth to Vermont is worse than a roller coaster. And we see the village men come and do their patching, but it doesn't last. So I think we need to have the north side of Division looked at too.
Yes, as I would stress, the entire village was evaluated, and if you look at the map of proposed maintenance and capital projects, there are projects in every portion of the village. There was no territoriality to this analysis. It was strictly based on pavement condition.
Well, those streets are very bad. We came down from the school, and that's just a block from us. And there are big holes in there since this winter, so it's not getting better. That street is getting worse. And I was told, oh, you live on a good street. Well, listening to other people talk tonight, yes, it's probably a much better street, but it needs repairs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, getting the sign again. All right. Okay. All right, we're live. Okay, state your name for the record.
Hi, I'm Carol Marcus. I'd like to thank the village for having this program here tonight and going over the streets that need to be repaired and the flood things. I just want to make some
Thank you for being here with
observation.
us and hanging in there with us.
Yeah, I don't like to pay taxes, but if you look at your tax bill, the village gets a little sliver compared to the school districts. So we're not talking about a lot of money for fixing streets and flooding and all that. I, too, know what streets to drive on and don't drive on. I just want to make some observations that I've done. I blew a tire, so I had to get new tires. I'm not a happy camper, but I should have known better than to drive down those streets. I just want to say that all the pothole debris causes stones to go into curbs, and sometimes the street sweeper can't pick up the stones, so people could sweep their streets and help the village do that, because that's what contributes to the flooding. If you live downhill, the stones go down in the rain into the inlets, and that causes flooding things. Also, I see trucks get confused when they come to town. I see these heavy, heavy trucks, and I see other towns have a weight limit on their streets. They don't allow certain vehicles to go up and down streets. We might be able to preserve something. I mean, local deliveries might be okay, but there should be a weight limit.
Yes, there
And
is.
also tree roots. Believe it or not, I had a tree cut down because it was dead on my parkway, and used to flood around those roots. While sometimes we might have too many trees on the parkway, too many overgrown trees that are going into the streets that damage the streets, and that might be another thing of causing. So we might need to review our street program, our tree program, and our flooding program too, because it all kind of relates to one another. But I read about some new technology on streets. I'm sure Vitas does. These are high-end streets, but they really, really last a lot longer, like 20 to 30 years. There's new products that they put with the normal specking. And if we could look into some newer technologies, maybe the cost might be a little bit more, but if we could get 20 years more wear and tear out of the streets, it might be something we can look at.
Sure.
That's all I have to comment on. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I want to circle back to something you mentioned in regards to your property tax bill. It's a good point. We've talked about that in the past as well. I can use my property tax bill as an example. I pay right around $4,500. We'll see what it is this year. But according to last year, that's about where I was at. And the village's portion of my property tax bill equals about $758 and some change. And that money has to be divided up amongst a number of different areas within the village. So imagine taking $758 out of a $4,500 property tax bill. If you go back and look at your bills and see how it's itemized, it's pretty interesting and a little shocking when you see how much is actually allocated. And it was an education for me to go and really dig in and crunch the numbers and see. Our schools are extremely important, and I'm certainly not picking on the schools by any means, but it just kind of illustrates what that reality is in regards to the village and how little bit of money we have to spread over a large area. I mean, our village, if you drive it from Roosevelt Road to North and North Avenue, on a good day, it might take you 20 minutes, maybe even a half hour, depending on traffic and things like that. It's a compressed town, but there's a lot of town within this area that we have about a 4-mile radius. So it's pretty interesting. And we've talked about the maps over here. These are literally hot off the press. We just received these from Robinson Engineering. We appreciate all the work, going, and you know how big the town really is when you look at every single road. And every road should be mentioned on here in some way, shape, or form. And we will post these on the website. And if you don't have access to the internet, we'll find a way to get it to you if you don't have time after we wrap up here to take a closer look at it. So with that, I want to make sure that we've covered all the questions that you all have. Thanks for hanging in there with us. We had a lot on the agenda tonight. I don't see anybody else here. Last call before I pull up the board. Okay, I think then we'll bring the board back up for some closing comments. And we're going to need a handheld mic for that. And I know they're working on that in the back there. So do we have one? Are we good? Oh, wonderful. Thank you. So we'll get the board back together. And I want to reassure everybody that's had questions tonight. We have captured your information. There's a couple folks still in the audience that will make sure we have your information so we can get back to you, so we can do this follow-up with you. Okay. Right. All right. Yeah, I'll leave one down here. Yeah. Okay. As we wrap up, can everybody hear me? Got a little bit of feedback here. I know we've talked about a lot, but I'd like to give the board, they've been very attentive, sitting in the audience with us here tonight, listening to everything. We are a team up here. We work very well together. I'm proud to say that to you, and they are hearing you and listening to you. We all are collectively in this together. We're all residents just like you, and we're eager to come up with the solutions as we've been discussing tonight. So with that, before we close out tonight, I'd like to throw it to the board and see if our board has anything that they'd like to add before we close. So I'll start to my left. Trustee Wagner, I'm going to pass this down to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank all the residents that came tonight. Every time we have a town hall meeting, we get input, new input. We somehow uncover problems that may have gone undetected, and I appreciate residents coming and hanging in for this, long program. One thing I want to stress, especially about the stormwater utility, that is a proposal that has to come back to the board. It hasn't been approved, and I appreciate all the comments about that. One of my concerns is we're going to a referendum, and then we also want to bring to the residents a user fee for the stormwater utility, and my concern is that our residents have a limited capacity for increased taxes and increased user fees. I also appreciated the remark that Mr. Werner made about how long will the stormwater utility be in effect. I think sometimes it's important to have a sunset provision and some things like that. I think he mentioned the Tollway Authority, which is not necessarily a good comparison, but so I heard those concerns. Once again, I think these town hall meetings are never a waste of time. We always hear new things, and it's good for us to hear people come to the microphone and tell us what they're thinking. One thing I did want to mention, and you probably will want to mention this too, Madam President, that there's a blue ribbon committee that's going to be formed to help with the preparation and dissemination of information in advance of the referendum. So I would encourage residents to contact anyone up here and let us know if you're interested in being part of the Blue Ribbon Committee. My phone number is 630-279-3499. If you want to call me or call President Bullwinkle. One other observation, I'll be very quick. It takes time to form a consensus, and I think it seems like we're treading water, no pun intended, with respect to the pools, and it takes time sometimes to find a clear direction of a way to go. So just bear with us, and I think we're getting there. So that's all I had.
Thank you, Trustee Wagner. All right, I'm going to toss it down to Trustee Bolfus, who has a mic.
Yeah, I would like to thank everybody who came tonight, because it's important for us as board members to hear your concerns, but I think it's also important for all your residents to hear your neighbors' concerns and the issues everybody has, so to hear the whole picture. I'm just kind of sorry that some people had to leave because we did get a little late, but it's important that you hear all the issues. So when we talked about a lot of numbers tonight, we started with the pools, about rebuilding the pools, new pools, $6 million a piece if we were to do each one. What was it, $8 million if we had one centralized pool? And we talked on the money for the stormwater fund that we're proposing later on this year probably. A lot of money there too. And but there's other concerns that we're dealing with up here on the board besides the pools and the stormwater and the roads. We also have sewer separation. We have the library. They would like to have some improvements there. We have rec center. People would like to see the rec center redone, the community rec center. So there's a whole lot of other issues that take a lot of money. And tonight we just talked about 3 of them, but we're wrestling with all these other ones at the same time. So there's only a pot that's so big we all know that in our own homes that we only have so much money to use and we have to prioritize projects. For me, the most important thing is the stormwater. You know, when you're talking to a family in town who's had water not just come into their basement, but go in on their first floor. Not once this last year, but a number of years before, and a number of years before that. You know, we can't expect people in the village to have to put up with that. You know, maybe you have some water flowing down your street that you maybe, you know, is just, you know, a couple inches deep. But if you got water coming in your basement and into your first floor, you saw the pictures on Addison Road, where you just saw the top of the van, you know, that needs to be taken care of. And then we also have people who I talk to who have sewer backup when it rains, you know, because they're on the combined sewer system. They don't just have water, they have sewage in their basement. We shouldn't have to live that way. So those are issues, for me, are on the top list of my priority list. And the village board, just this last year, we had a strategic planning session. We spent a whole day on a Saturday with staff. We were there from what, 8 o'clock till 5 o'clock, laying down what our priorities were. And then all that information, each one of us had what we ranked things and issues in the village. And that was all taken and put together and compiled and graded and rated. And the number one consensus on the staff and the village board issue was roads and sewers, what we just talked about tonight. After that came recreation issues, being the pools and the recreation building. And then it went down from there to a whole bunch of other categories. And we split it up into groups: strategic, short-term, long-term, complex, non-complex. I don't want to get into that too deeply. But we're dealing with a lot of issues. Well, like I said, for me, the number one issue is stormwater and sewer separation, so people don't have to, every 3-4 years, have to put a whole new furnace in their house, gut their whole basement, new drywall, everything. So those are priority issues. Trustee Wagner mentioned that we had talked earlier about possible referendum in November for roads, and that's basically just for the road surface. The sewer separation, there's a designated funding source for that already, so that would be part of what we would do when we do a road and we have to do a reconstruction, because we already have a wastewater fund. But there is a special committee that's the manager and the president are trying to put together to promote a road referendum. I think we hope we were taking notes of people who made comments tonight that they were in favor of it, so we can contact them and maybe they could be part of that committee. So thank you all again for coming, and I think we all gained a little more knowledge tonight on what some of the challenges are we have in Villa Park.
Again, thank everyone for coming out. I just wanted to mention that when I started on this board, we did something that was never done in the village before. We had a professional assessment done of our village and its operations. And since then, we have hired a qualified professional village manager. And I think everyone here can see the differences that's made for our village. Things are getting done. Streets are getting fixed. We're having town hall meetings. We are planning. We are trying to address these issues. And I think it's being done in a very positive manner. I want to thank the village manager and his staff, very professional, and I know that they are going to be able to help us get these goals accomplished. And I hope the residents are positive and supportive of the referendum to fix the roads, because it's absolutely necessary, or we'll never get there. We'll always be behind. So thank you all for your comments, positive and otherwise. We are listening to you. You know, we're out there. We're going down to Springfield next week. We'll be talking to our state legislator about the needs, the funding needs that we have in Villa Park. We've done it in the past, and we're going to keep doing it in the future. So I want to thank everyone for their support, and I want to thank the village board especially, and again, the manager. So thank you all very much.
Trustee Davis.
I would like to thank everybody for coming out tonight, no matter which topic we're here to talk about. I've been on this board, I believe, 8 years now, and the biggest complaint I've ever gotten is always about the roads, the roads, the roads. This winter has been extremely hard on these roads. And to be frank, I don't think anybody actually said it. This village cannot afford to repair these roads. We can do 2 roads a year, and we all know there's more than 2 roads that need to be fixed. I would hope that people would seriously consider a referendum. I know I look at my tax bill and I cannot believe the minimal amount of money our village gets. It actually makes me sick. I would be very willing to pay for a road referendum. And I've got a street that's a couple years old, but that's not the point. I drive on other streets. We all drive on other streets. Today I drove down Summit. I had to drive in the opposite oncoming lanes because the road, I was going northbound. I had to drive in the southbound lanes because northbound was so bad. We actually, as a village board, we need your help. People that are willing and in favor of the road referendum to come forward and try and help us out. There's rules and regulations to where we can't do certain things. But my point is, we're never going to catch up on these road folks. They're going to keep crumbling at the rate we're going. And the staff is doing a great job. Grants are nice. We just don't have the money. We can go bankrupt trying to get this done. And we want all these other things. And I think one of the key components to having a good, successful town is having the nice roads. It increases our business potentials. It increases our residential values. It makes our town more inviting. I've been here 20-something years on the one block, and I've seen the streets just, it looks just like I'm in Chicago. You know, I don't want us to be in that rank. So I'm hoping that people will get behind a road referendum and let's try and do something. Because like I said, next winter, if it's like this, we're going to have very few roads we can drive down. So please think about getting involved with the road referendums. And I'm always able to, you want to call my house, it's 630-279-2201. I'd be glad to talk to you. Or you can talk to the president or anybody on this board. Call Rich at home too, he likes it at midnight. But that's what I want to say. I want people to realize, even though we're a municipality, we have limited funding too, you know, so it's just not going to get done. Cold hard facts. And there's not a bleep button, so I'll be nice. I'll leave it with that. Thank you.
I think one thing you're hearing tonight is a board that not only cares but wants to be aggressive about our issues. And we are going to continue to do town hall meetings like this. This is the second one we've done since the new board took over. It'll be a year on May 13th, and we've already done 2. We're going to do more. We want to hear from you, and we just appreciate all of the comments and concerns that you've shared with us. As the board has mentioned, you know, we've received a lot of new insight. We've heard some things that we've heard in the past, but we've also heard some new things to definitely keep in mind as we move forward with this. And we appreciate you being partners with us in this, because we can't underscore enough that we can't do this by ourselves. We need to really come together as a community and make this work and make this happen. A couple of the board members mentioned the Blue Ribbon Committee. I've actually received some emails from some residents who are interested in participating in some way, shape, or form with the road referendum that we've referenced tonight. Again, if there's anybody out there, or if you know of somebody else who's not here tonight, or if you're watching at home, if you're interested, please give us a call, send us an email, let us know that you're interested so we can get this coalition together that will help educate the community at large about what this is all about. It'll be on a smaller scale than what we did tonight, but there's that education component that's so important. So my phone number is area code 630-834-5032. Please don't hesitate to call any of us on the board. We're accessible. We work for you. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Whether you love us or hate us or maybe a little bit of both, we're here for you, and we're listening, and we really do care. And we also have a staff as well that cares a lot and is very aggressive. I can only speak to the 5 years that I've been on the board so far, but certainly, this is probably the most aggressive I've ever seen. I can't speak to what it was before, but we're focusing on today and tomorrow, the future. That's where we're putting our energies. And it sounds like you all are there as well, and we appreciate that. I think there's one more.
I just want to mention the first Saturday of every month is a coffee with the board. It's just an informal discussion with the board members. So if you have concerns or questions or pictures or anything you want to share with the board, it's every Saturday morning, Village Hall at 9 a.m. Or the first Saturday, I'm sorry, it's been a long night. First Saturday of the month at 9 a.m. at Village Hall. So everyone's welcome, everyone's invited. Please come.
Thanks for hanging in there with us. If there's no other comments from the board, I think I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn. Do we have a motion? Yes. Trustee Taglia, do we have a second? Trustee Davis wants to stay. Second. Okay. Trustee Wagner, second. With Trustee Bolfus, third. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you, Villa Park. We appreciate your time. Thank you.